So, Oxfam, a charity organization, did a report that found that Saudi Arabia's one sided war slash aggression against Yemen and its people were primarily done using weapons from the US and the UK. Let's get into the article. UK and US weapons used in Yemen make them complicit. An Oxfam report which analyzed 1,727 attacks on Yemeni civilians since the start of 2021 shows that at least 839 civilians were killed and 1,775 others were wounded during this time. 87 of the deaths were caused by airstrikes alone. The aircraft used in the attacks, over half of which were British made, used cluster bombs, the use of which is banned by international law. The fatalities were due to artillery strikes, missile barrages, drone attacks, landmines, roadside bombs, and the use of light arms. According to another report by an American think tank, the American Thinker, Saudi Arabia spends some $200 million per day to hire mercenaries. $200 million one day for just a day to hire mercenaries and maintain the arms supply. What? These people are lunatics. Just like America and the UK, who sell them these weapons and arms. A large portion of this money goes to the UK for purchasing Typhoon and Tornado aircraft, paveway bombs, as well as Brimstone and Storm Shadow missiles, making the UK fully complicit in the crimes committed against Yemeni civilians, as stated by the International Development Committee of the UK. Given that the UK has a long history of defense exports to Saudi Arabia and its coalition partners, and considering the evidence, it seems inevitable that any violations of international humanitarian and human rights law by the coalition have involved armaments supplied from the UK. These arms have also been used by the Saudi-led coalition to bomb health facilities on 19 separate instances which constitute war crimes. They've been bombing health facilities, which are like hospitals and so on. Oxfam's policy advisor, Martin Butcher, called on the UK government to immediately cease its arms sales to the Saudis. He also pointed out the hypocrisy of UK sanctions against Russia over alleged war crimes in Ukraine, while turning a blind eye to the blatant war crimes of the Saudi coalition in Yemen, which they helped arm. Mr. Butcher also highlighted it's absolutely hypocrisy. We've been calling on this hypocrisy about the West, US, UK supporting Ukraine, while they've been, aiding and abetting in the murder of many peoples around the world, from Palestinians to Yemenis. The same day that Russia invaded the Ukraine, the US was dropping bombs on Somalia, the same day. Mr. Butcher also highlighted the fact that the UK government still continues to sell arms to Saudi Arabia, being its second biggest arms supplier, which will inevitably be used in the war against Yemen. He revealed that the UK government have not only been arming Saudi Arabia, but have also been very reluctant to use their position on the United Nations Security Council to push for peace. So not only are they using or supplying Saudi Arabia to kill Yemenis, but they've also been reluctant to use their position at the UN Security Council to push for peace. That's absolute immoral. Absolutely immoral and evil. This is the UK. Saudi Arabia is the biggest importer of arms in the world, second only to a country with 40 times the population of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In the year 2020 alone, the kingdom imported nearly $1 billion worth of arms. $1 billion. in 2020 alone, the majority of which came from the US. This, however, does not stop the US from parroting a tired narrative of pushing for peace in Yemen, when in reality they even hesitate to call it a war. To be fair, it's not a war. It's a one-sided aggression from Saudi Arabia against Yemen. To call it a war in my mind makes it think that it's equal. You have two equal opposing sides, but it's not that. It's not even that in Palestine/Israel. It's not a war. It's aggression. It's one-sided aggression. So I agree with the U.S. In terms of this article that it's not a war. So you shouldn't classify it as one. It's one-sided aggression. This is apparent by President Biden's initial pledges to end the war during his presidential campaign, while continually supplying arms to the kingdom to this very day. And then there's a quote from U.S. Special Envoy to Yemen, Timothy Lenderking. Let me first begin by reiterating our commitment, the commitment of the United States to helping improve Yemeni lives. Absolute bullshit. Creating the space for Yemenis to collectively determine their own future. Bullshit. And to advance a durable resolution that ends a conflict in Yemen. They've aided to it, not ended it. However, the weapons fragments emblazoned with US and UK branding paint a starkly different picture. The 6 months United Nations sponsored truce, which was supposed to be grounds for longer standing solutions, was also very quickly and repeatedly violated by Saudi Arabia. This is what Yemen's Ansarullah resistance movement sees as the reason for the temporary truce. The Saudi-led coalition's main goal out of the truce was to stop the Houthi Ansarullah forces from carrying out retaliatory military operations against targets deep inside Saudi Arabia. Moreover, the crippling sea, land, and air blockade on Yemen has created a humanitarian disaster in the country. That's from Ansarullah resistance movement in Yemen. With all options exhausted, the Ansarullah movement has now said that it will inevitably launch missile strikes deep inside Saudi and UAE territories. This comes amid reports that the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is looking to find a way out of the incredibly costly Yemen war. I'm glad that it's costly to the Saudis. They're the ones who started this. The Lebanese Al Akhbar newspaper wrote, Riyadh is now showing a lot of flexibility during negotiations, is currently has no concern other than getting security guarantees that strategic facilities deep inside the country would not be hit. It has abandoned the illusion of turning Yemen into a country under its tutelage and has instead sufficed for security assurances. However, this report needs further corroboration. While the Saudi coalition has indeed failed in its attempt to strangle Yemen into submission, thankfully, their aggression succeeded in bringing about what the UN describes as the world's worst humanitarian crisis in Yemen. And there's a picture that says over 80 Yemeni newborns die every day. 80 die every day to Saudi-led war. And this is from the ministry. Yemen's health ministry. 39% of babies are premature. This is so immoral and unethical. And the US and the UK are complicit. They're complicit because they sell these arms, these fighter jets, that allow Saudi Arabia, instead of censoring and sanctioning and embargoing Saudi Arabia, they give them and sell them these weapons to use against the Yemenis. While overtly and publicly they come out and say, we want to improve the lives of the Yemeni people. We want to help them determine their own future, just like that quote that I read you earlier. Completely immoral. Let me know what you guys think. Subscribe to the channel, comment, like. If you're listening to this on the podcast, tweet me. Let me know what you think about this wild story. UK and US weapons used in Yemen make them complicit. Take care.